Hello, everyone, and welcome to AVPN's Sustainability Dialogues in partnership with Circulate Capital on catalyzing capital to advance the circular economy and fight climate change in Asia. I'm Komal Sahu, Chief of Sustainable Finance at AVPN, and your moderator for this session. Today, we will hear from an esteemed group of speakers and members to discuss the circular economy and how capital can be deployed to adapt and mitigate the impact of climate change for Asia. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. Thank you to AVPN for convening this great conversation, and very much looking forward to the panel discussion later. As Kamal said, we're here to talk about catalyzing capital to advance a circular economy and fight climate change in Asia. I'm the CEO and founder of Circulate Capital. We are an investment management firm based here in Singapore that focuses on financing companies and technologies that fight plastic pollution and advance the circular economy, and also fight climate change. I think what we're hoping to share in the next 10 or so minutes is a little bit of an explanation as to the opportunities that we've seen and the investment case that we started to build after looking at hundreds of investment opportunities across the region, and try to understand a little bit about what drives them, what the economic and financial opportunities are, and bring it to life with some case studies. And then I'm very excited to engage with our panel to talk a little bit more deeply about these opportunities and questions from the audience as well. So as I jump in here, I think it's important to talk a little bit about the circular economy. It sounds like lots of folks here are familiar with the concept, but many more are not. If you think about how our economy functions, we operate mostly in a linear economy of take, make, waste, meaning we're taking resources from the environment, we're making products, and then we're disposing of them. And this linear model is almost entirely dependent on the use of virgin materials. A circular economy model or approach to materials such as plastic, which we'll talk a lot about today, is based on the idea of keeping those materials and plastics in the economy for as long as possible, to reduce the need for new materials and to drive as much use and value for them as we can. And we've also seen a lot of exciting research here, and I'll talk more about this as we go, but that the circular economy, by turning this waste from a cost and a pollution into a resource, can create trillions of dollars of economic output globally over the next 10 years. And at the same time, as we'll talk about, this can create a massive step forward in the fight against climate change. So as we look at fighting climate change, many folks often think about the energy transition and a focus on renewable energy. But the truth is also that only 45% of current GHG emissions also are related to products and food that we produce. So it's really critical that we're investing in both the solutions for renewable energies and such, but also for reducing the carbon footprint of the packaging and the products that we use. At the same time, there's a growing number of investors looking at this space that are looking to seize the opportunity of the circular economy. In the last few years, we've seen a huge spike in the number of circular economy funds, funds that are in the public sector and also in the private sector, looking at different types of investment. BlackRock had started a fund with nearly just $10 million under management, and it grew to over $1 billion as well in just a year. And then we've seen a 10x increase in the number of private market funds with a circular economy focus in just the last several years. But much more are needed than just these few funds to drive this transition of a circular and low carbon economy, especially in Asia. So in Asia is actually the heart of both the climate crisis and the plastic pollution crisis. Many cities and regions are facing the impacts of climate change. And even we just recently saw some new research that found that cities like Jakarta and Manila are facing extreme financial risk due to climate change. And that a 2-degree increase in temperature could result in a 17% loss of GDP across ASEAN over the next 30 years, whereas in the US and Europe, only a 7% loss is estimated. So there's incredible, much more risk and also opportunity across this region. Because Asia is a consumption and production powerhouse, it's also the largest opportunity to deploy circular solutions at scale and set circularity as the default. So by investing in the circular economy for plastics in Asia, we believe that investors have the unique opportunity to fight plastic pollution and the climate crisis at the same time. But the size of the prize is huge as we think about investing in both circularity and climate change. A 45% reduction in plastic leakage into the world's ocean is possible by improving waste management and recycling in just 5 Asian countries. And at the same time, 150 million tons of GHG could be eliminated if we prevented plastic leakage 100% in countries like India and Indonesia. That would be the same as shutting down 40 coal-fired power plants over the next 10 years. Presenting 100%, and then, on top of that, it creates significant economic value. So not just fighting environmental challenges, but also creating opportunities in hundreds of billions of dollars of economic opportunity and millions of jobs. But the challenge is that it's going to take many billions of dollars to be invested over the coming years to really drive a circular supply chain. Those billions will need to come from large-scale institutional investors that are financing the future of infrastructure in South and Southeast Asia. Unfortunately, most of those investors are sitting on the sidelines. They're focusing on classic infrastructure like bridges and roads and ports. They need to see more visible pipeline, more evidence of track record, and more investment products, more funds and funds of funds and private equity funds, as well as the supportive ecosystems to connect capital to the operators. The challenge is that the opportunity on the ground are small scale. And at this stage, we really need to catalyze capital to fill this missing middle and prove that investing in the sector can generate competitive returns. Our mission at Circulate Capital is to invest and finance to prevent plastic pollution and also prove the investment case at the same time. We established a Circulate Capital Ocean Fund in partnership with leading global companies. Many will hear from Danone in a little bit. They're one of our founding investors, but we're also backed by PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Unilever, Chanel, Procter & Gamble, and several others. And these are the companies that are looking to connect their value chains to the solutions that are coming out of the circular economy. Right now, out of the Circulate Capital Ocean Fund, we've invested $40 million in 7 companies that fit this criteria, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we've also recognized the need to bring more capital into this strategy to start to prove that this is investable and start to catalyze that capital from institutional investors. So that's why we launched Circulate Capital Disrupt, which is backed by family offices and private investors. And we invest in innovations at the nexus of climate technology and plastic circularity. At the same time, we're bringing more capital into our existing strategy of recycling infrastructure. Our goal is to scale existing solutions to reduce plastic waste and advance circularity across the value chain, and at the same time, prove the investment case to catalyze that capital. There are 4 key areas that we've identified as the best opportunities for financial and impact returns. First is disruptive innovation to fill the design gap. We need new materials. We need packaging and products that are designed for recycling or enabled to use more recycled material. We also need to increase collection and sorting to eliminate the leakage into the environment and ensure that plastic waste is cleanly sorted and processed to enable recycling. And then once it's collected, we need to bring in technology to help improve the quality of the material and upcycle that, not just to be downcycled into lower value products, but to be fully circular in bottle-to-bottle applications. And then finally, we need to improve the digitization of the system to fill the data gap and improve the amount of information that we're able to track and act on, which is currently very difficult to understand and trace. In general, we find the waste and recycling sector to be quite interesting for investors. Right now, it's underfunded, so there's low competition for deals and reasonable valuations. The entry valuations that we've seen tend to be in the single-digit multiples of revenue, and many of the companies that are profitable today with attractive operating margins in the 10, 20, and 20+%, earning single-digit millions in turnover annually. We see the potential for revenue growth in the range of 8 to 10 times over the next 5 years, and tangible opportunities to improve their operating margins by as much as or as little as 500 basis points or more. It's an exciting sector that hasn't had a lot of institutional capital coming into it, which means there's tremendous opportunity for upside, given those fundamentals. So let's bring this to life a little bit with some case studies. I'd like to introduce you to a few of the promising companies that we've looked at. Resiki is an exciting Indonesian waste management service. They're collecting both dry and wet waste. And they're currently running 2 facilities and planning to build about 10 more across Indonesia. And their opportunity is to prevent plastic and all types of waste from being burned, landfilled, or entering the environment. And then they can capture and monetize all of those materials as much as possible. Sri Chakra Polyplast is a leading technology-driven plastic recycling company in India, and they have built the first of its kind bottle-to-bottle recycling facility in India. This is now enabling for the first time full bottle-to-bottle recycling happening in the country using locally sourced material. Recycle is India's first waste commerce company. It's providing end-to-end digital solutions that connect all of the actors across the value chain, from waste generators and collectors to recyclers and brand owners. It's also facilitating material flows, transactions, and driving efficiency and traceability, which are key solutions to transforming the value chain and solving that digitization challenge we were talking about earlier. And finally, Phase Change Solutions is a global leader in manufacturing. They make plant-based phase change materials that can stabilize temperatures across a wide range of applications, which means it can replace styrofoam in the cold chain. It can reduce food waste and food waste packaging. But at the same time, it's a lower carbon footprint product, and it's bio-based, which means it's backyard compostable. So it's a type of innovative material that's available today and ready for scale. So the potential for both environmental impact and financial return of these solutions is quite significant in Asia and beyond. It's an amazing market opportunity for these solutions to be developed at scale. And we're really excited to work with our corporate investors. You'll hear from Corinne from Danone and her team in a minute, and private investors like Ratna and Pandu and their organizations to support the development of companies like the ones we just talked about and attract other investors into the space. So I'm very much looking forward to engaging with the panel and the rest of you through the Q&A.
Thank you, Rob. Those statistics are really staggering and the need more compelling than ever. With that, I would like to welcome Corinne Tapp, President Asia, Middle East and Africa, Pandu Sharif, Managing Partner of Indies Capital, and Ratna Kartajunima, an entrepreneur and impact investors. We have a diverse group of panelists and LPs today representing corporate VCs as well as family offices and individual impact investors. I would like to start with each of you as to why you consider the circular economy as an investment opportunity and how it fits into your overall strategy and how it connects with your climate goals. Corinne, I'd like to start with you. Being a corporate member of the Circulate investment portfolio, what is Danone's strategy to advance the circular economy for plastics, and how does it relate to your climate strategy?
Thank you, Kamal, and good afternoon, good evening to everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. So packaging is fundamental to our mission of Danone to bring health through food to as many people as possible and to be able to provide the world with nutritious and high quality food and drinks. Packaging is fundamental. But we also recognize that this cannot come at the expense of the environment. And today's mainstream packaging, unfortunately, is not sustainable because it's still primarily linear. Our aim at Danone is to make our packaging 100% circular. And as part of this approach, we are working to expand reusable packaging today, which is a third of our portfolio. And in some countries like Indonesia, actually, it's 70% of our portfolio. And to innovate more, to develop more of these kind of delivery models. To do this, we are absolutely committed to work with others and to build the systems and infrastructures that are needed to put this in place. We also ensure that 100% of our packaging will be reusable, recycling, or compostable by 2025. And that we will source also more recycled content. And by 2025, we are aiming for an average of 50% of recycled content in every product. And in Europe, that would be 100%. So to take an example in Indonesia, because that is a very large business for us, and it's a big country with huge challenges around packaging and waste management in general. So the Danone Aqua business launched in 2017 a movement called Bijak per Plastic. BY is about plastic, inviting all kinds of stakeholders and consumers to join this movement and together move towards a more circular economy. Our main commitment is that by 2025, we will collect more than we produce in Indonesia. And we're doing that through mainly 3 pillars. First is investing in collection and recycling facilities so that we are able to avoid many waste to go to the environment. The second is around education, to educate children and communities around the importance of segregation and recycling and collection. And the third is around packaging innovation and making sure that we are able to be 100% compostable, recyclable, or reusable by 2025. On climate, being a RE100 company, Danone is committed to use 100% renewable electricity by 2030. And this commitment, again, for example, in Indonesia, is through 6.2 MWP rooftop solar panels that we already have in 4 factories and that we aim to have at all of our factories by 2023. We also invested in a 6 tons biomass boiler that we have installed in a different factory. And we're looking for other renewable energy resources to make sure we reach our commitment by 2030. Furthermore, Danone is also committed to be a net zero company by 2050 at its entire supply chain by leveraging our actions in renewable energy, energy efficiency, packaging circularity, and fostering regenerative agriculture. And climate and plastics are indeed linked, even though many people are not aware of that. And the main levers where carbon and waste reduction go hand in hand are the following. To expand the reusable packaging and innovating to develop new delivery models will help significantly to reduce overall plastic demand, and as a result, will reduce carbon emissions significantly. In Indonesia, 70% of our business is in full reusable circular model through the 19-liter famous Aqua gallons. That is the main and most popular format that we have, and this is a far more sustainable model than many others. Also, our ambition to source more recycled content will have a huge impact on that. So, for example, a bottle that is made from 100% recycled plastic, like this one that we have in Indonesia, uses up to 50% less in carbon emissions than other packaging. So on top of that, we are also exploring the opportunity to use more bio-based materials, which will also deliver savings versus the fossil-based materials. So overall, this is an approach that we are continue to explore with our partners and all stakeholders as part of the full ecosystem.
Thank you, Corinne. That's very valuable insights as to how a corporate like Danone is using this as a part of their climate strategies. I assume a lot of other organizations, other corporates are following a similar kind of thinking, and perhaps Danone is a leader in this space and is setting the thought leadership for others to follow. Ratna, over to you. Why did you decide to invest in the circular economy personally? And how does it impact your family office as well as your hospitality business?
For me, I guess it was first a personal curiosity. I remember when I left Indonesia right before I was going to go to high school, I remember that the waste problem was pretty bad, very, very bad already. Then I kind of left on my merry way to the US, go to school there, and just kind of forgot about it. And then when I came back in 2010, suddenly I was reminded that, oh, nothing has changed. It's gotten worse, in fact. So for the first couple years, or a bit more actually, I've just kind of been curious about finding ways or what I can do about it in my business. So I joined a hospitality firm called Potato Head at that time, but in the US, I was in hospitality, and I was kind of keeping tabs a lot of the sustainability development in that industry in the US. But in Jakarta, it was really, really far behind. And then one day, after a few years, I managed to meet a foundation that worked and gave some service on recycling. So I gave them a try and just did it for our office. And it worked pretty well for a year. And I just, wow, okay, I'm not satisfied with this. I want to go and, have a service like this for all our restaurants in Jakarta. And it was all by pure coincidence that I find this new startup called Waste for Change. And I just found the founder very passionate and really eager to figure this out for us in Jakarta. And so I started working with him. We were the first F&B customer. And from there, also for selfish reasons, because of the green premium, I became kind of their advocate and help try to find business for them as well, right? Because we just need more scale. And so, after several years trying to help them out and just being very good friends, it came to the opportunity where they needed to fundraise. And from there, I became, I guess, at the same time, became an angel investor. And I introduced them to my husband, Pandu, who's also going to speak very soon, who happened to just start VC. So, with him assisting, reviewing the numbers and his connections as well, he was able to raise funds with other funds as well to help support this startup. From Potato Head, as that all was going and happening in our company, we decided to kind of revisit our mission statement, our values, and all of that. So when we began to instill, being good, like doing good in terms of not just our social impact, but also our impact to the environment, and being able to trickle down those values all the way to all our leaders and all the way down to the people who, the housekeepers and, all the people facing in the front line, all the ideas started to develop, and every single department would have their own initiatives in reusing waste, upcycling, etc. So it was really nice. The ball started rolling, and ultimately for Potato Head, I mean, it's not our main business, right? We're a hospitality company that actually is very much into design, art, music, fashion. So that became the core of it. Like, how do we make upcycling beautiful? How can we make this zero waste lifestyle also fashionable, also cool, right? Also interesting. And I guess the best that we do is to do, art installations, things that like shock people and surprise people, so that it will kind of get etched in their mind and hopefully get them inspired to change behavior. So yeah, that's kind of, it was very organic really, how it got started for me.
I think you need to get to them where they are. And I like the idea of these art installations. And I guess in the hospitality industry, however you can make your mark is important. And Pandu, I guess you sort of joined hands in many ways with Ratna on this. Tell me, what do you see as a VC and a tech investor in this space? What have been your motivations behind investing in a circular economy?
I think, thanks for this. Outside of Ratna being my boss, just being public about it, she's boss at home and outside. But overall, I thought it was a good idea. I'm gonna be like very open about this because, our family business was in coal mining, right? Among all, like it's coal mining and coal power plants. So when before I was in the US, I was doing renewable energy. I moved back to the family, and that's what I was doing. And there's a lot of grief that brought to me the last 6-7 years, right? And what I did for my own investment business is actually focusing on everything non-coal. So there's two things I wanted to kind of say about this, which I think will unite quite nicely. For the family business, we recently divested, probably the largest coal power plant in the country, because we're moving to become similar to what Danone is saying, 2050, our government wants us to be 2060 to be carbon neutral. Our company wants to be more aggressive because it is smaller. We're not Danone size, right? But we want to be able to divest or move from carbon coal mining related into renewable energy, right? So we now have 2-3 different power plants that we're doing that are all renewable based. So that's number one. In our investment business, which is mainly technology businesses, now what's interesting, some of the larger ones that we've invested have become very public to say that they are going to be carbon neutral, right? The most recent one was Goto, which is a combination of Gojek and Tokopedia, which mentioned 2030 as their goal, which is an aggressive goal, but I think a number that they can meet, right? So, what's interesting, our business, when you talk about this, when Rob mentioned about the opportunity, I just thought it's just good business, that this is the future. The future is now. And I thought, for a VC business, our business is to venture, to take risk. And I think these are risks that are, in my view, worth taking. And I think, from a business perspective, what Rob is doing is actually creating new addressable markets. Essentially, it's new TAMs, right? And my view is that, this is probably one of those very unique opportunities all across, because the macro is supporting, the politics are supporting in some of the largest countries in the world. And now the private sectors are also working, because a lot of times I would say people were talking about this maybe a decade ago, and there was not much capital movement. Now we're seeing that, and I think we're just starting very early on, right? So last example, I'll tell you from our family business, we just hired a head of ESG, a very wonderful senior person. In our VC business, right, in our investment company business, we're also doing the same, because now it's a must-have. Most of our limited partners ask us to do it, and we love to do it. This is no longer about just what's your return, what's your MOIC, it's like, what are you doing with that capital, and what type of impact are you creating? That's an equal amount of need from our LP. So it's actually an incredible trend that we're seeing. So, what Rob is essentially doing, both Ratna and I are supportive, but, in a way, I would say it's also good business. We just think that this is structurally will be a potential game changer across, right? So that's just my view. So I'm probably more market driven in that sense, but I think the market is now just starting to begin, and it's our job to take a little bit of these risks, equity risks into the businesses that Rob is investing in, a couple of others. Now there's becoming a bigger businesses, right? This really feels, Rob, like, when I mentioned to you before, it felt like VC world 2014-15 in Southeast Asia, just starting,
Yeah.
And things can move very, very fast, right?
And we've started to see that too in our conversations with investors in just the last few years. Many different types of investors are more interested in the conversation than ever before. I remember when we first started talking and created Circulate Capital a few years ago, there was not that many people who were interested in the conversation, but just in that short period of time, we now have a much more interest from family offices, from private investors, institutions, and the development finance institutions as well have started to pay a lot more attention to see, because they're starting to understand how this sector and circular economy can help them meet their development objectives, both social and economic development objectives around the region. And now that climate has really taken hold as a key target and focal area, that's really driving a lot of this as well. But you can't, I think it's going to be hard to hire an ESG manager or director in this region for the next few years. They're all taken. The talent is being sucked up because every investment firm is looking to fill that role.
No, I agree. Absolutely agree.
Pandu, what you mentioned is music to our ears. I mean, we as an organization, our mission is to move capital towards impact, and seeing that there is a compelling, and hearing from you, Rob, as well, that there's a compelling financial proposition there as well in this space, and the need for talent pool in this space. I mean, it's growing and it's moving in the right direction as far as we're concerned. I want to focus on the challenges and the opportunities of scaling the circular economy in Asia. Corinne, over to you. How is Danone transforming its supply chains to align with your own strategy? And how do you work with partners such as Circulate Capital to do that?
So the main challenge in integrating these innovative solutions is that we need to look beyond our own value chain and work together with the entire chain from the beginning to the end, or beginning to a new beginning. And it's never up to one company to alone in the circular economy and to change the system, right? It requires the whole system to shift, and that requires a lot of collaboration, pre-competitive partnerships, and new ways of working. So, for example, in 2021, again in Indonesia, collaborating with Veolia, also a large multinational company, we are accelerating our effort to recycle plastic waste and increase our recycling content in our product up to 50% in line with our commitments. And we have partnered with them to open a plant in East Java with a capacity of 25,000 tons, tripling the recycled PET for Danone Aqua, creating also 225 jobs and becoming direct, by the way, there's many more indirect, and becoming a major player in the growing recycling market. And without these kind of close alliances between Veolia, the recycler, Danone, the collectors, the off-taker, this investment would not have been possible. So it really requires strong collaborations and also visions to really change the system and work together towards these solutions. Danone Aqua has also established 2 waste facilities, the TPST, in Lamongan and in Jimbaran in Bali, together with a local Indonesian waste company. And these facilities will help us to reach our target to collect more plastic and then we actually use. This is one of the key commitments we have. And the business model of the facilities has proved to be successful, and the plan to scale up this project together with the help of Circulate Capital as co-investors. So together we have the potential to collect and sort 3 metric tons of waste per year, which will not only make a difference for Danone, but for the whole of Indonesia. So social inclusion is another thing that we believe is really crucial, because it's in our environment, this is about developing sustainable solutions for plastic waste, but also including people and making them a part of the formal economy. And solutions which pair inclusive job creation with higher collection and recovery activities are much needed. And the greatest example of this is also our partnership with Octopus, which sets up a digital infrastructure which helps the waste pickers connect to consumers directly, taking them out of the landfills and giving them access to healthcare and providing a price incentive to increase the wages they earn. So investing into Circulate Capital means that we can work together with a large group of partners to achieve economies of scale and give the waste management and recycling sector a big push into the right direction. Not only creating economic value and jobs, but also providing solutions to making sure that packaging waste doesn't end up in nature, but stays in the economy. Having said that, I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you all on this call to investigate the potential to join and look for investable opportunities in new materials, material recovery, and deep tech solutions to combat plastic waste, which is so much needed, but also can be an interesting economical opportunity.
Thank you, Corinne. Over to you, Ratna. How are you finding this as opportunities in your family business or as an impact investor? Are you seeing such opportunities come to you for you to sort of move capital towards this this circular economy?
Yes, I mean, I guess since we started doing this, even the consumers, our customers are, the millennials and younger, right? So for them, it is something that is, very, very, it's kind of like one of their values, right? So businesses would have to start, to attract them, you have to also change, right? So all industries, there's going to be a push for this because your consumers want it, right? And therefore, when I first started, there was this one startup, right, that I invested in. But now, because I guess I'm not like Pandu. I don't see so many companies, but somehow they just kind of come to me. People know that I'm very passionate about this, and they just introduce me to companies, right? So a lot of them in Indonesia, at least, are still very, very small. They're startups, but like Rob has presented, the onus is on us now to help those companies get larger, right? So that we can actually solve this issue. I wouldn't. It's just very exciting now to see all of these, I guess, new companies here in Indonesia available. And I guess from a personal level, from our family office, it was, very interesting for us to meet Rob and to see what his fund is doing, because they're, aside from Indonesia, they also have a lot of investments in India, and the situation in India is, I guess, a lot more, it's like moving a lot faster. They're, I guess, ahead of the game, and it'll be great to be able to learn from them, because we need to, right? We need to do it in order to solve this, and we hope that there will be a lot more, I guess, learning across different regions, and then within Asia, learning across different countries to be able to solve this issue.
Pandu, have you seen opportunities in this sector elsewhere through your other funds? How are you balancing financial returns with the environmental impact? And if there was any guidance you could give to the VC industry or to the private equity industry, what would you say to them?
I try not to talk too much about it, simply because maybe it's our secret sauce to differentiate ourselves further. But as for our limited partners, it's our service, right? But essentially, one thing that's important is that, for us, not just from a principal level, from a company level or a fund level, we do look at this as an important part. So in the VC business, just being upfront, right? We are looking a lot business with respect to logistics. We're looking at business that focus on the agri side, on the value chain side, on the fishery side as well. I mean, Ratna already gave me like a lot of things to talk about after we both watched Seaspiracy on Netflix, and we have an e-fishery type of business. And I was like, oh, okay, let me go take a look about what these guys are doing, right? And frankly speaking, these guys have watched it because they're all young guys, right? So they want to try to do the right things too. So, there's actually a lot of good examples, simply because maybe it's a function of age, that a lot of these founders are still in their mid-30s. And I think, it's funny that their value probably fits us better, where they really care about not just financial return. They also care the impact to the stakeholders. Maybe it's a bit different than some of the business people that we have faced. And maybe this is just generational, the situation that we face, right? Where it's not just about absolute financial return. And, our job in the investment world is not just to focus on return. So, we're all about managing risks, getting very good returns for investors, but also giving very good impact through the companies we invest. And it has to be all three. And that's actually the demand from our customers, clients, right? LPs. So this is now a must-have. So for those that are obviously in this call that are trying to think about, okay, how do we make money in this space, or how do we balance between the two? I don't think it's even a word of balance anymore. It's more about a priority. This is simply now part of the to-do list that you got to do, right? On the stuff that you invest. And this has become prevalent in the United States. It has become quite prevalent in Europe through our investment partners, whether it's a European private equity firm or VC, US VCs that are very active. We're learning that. So to be honest, I'm being honest with you, we're still learning too. we're winging it in a way. We're learning about what to do, what are the things that we got to do, how do we measure it, not just the intent, but how do we measure improvement on a quantifiable manner, and what are the ultimate goals out of this. We're using this kind of UN SDG cards, and they kind of put around what are the impact for each of these companies. And to be honest, I'm still learning. I'm like first grade on this, right? But at least the intent is there, and we want to be better every day, right? And I'm sure whoever, as Rob probably knows, those that's been in the ESG business too, they're probably like 5-7 years ahead of us. But what the most important thing is that all of us in the industry now wants to learn, realize this is important, and we just got to do it. It's like learning investing the first time. It's like swimming. You know, we got to start learning how to swim, go inside the pool and just start swimming and learning about the business, right? And this is a core part of our business today.
I guess we're all learning, Pandu, so it's good that we can all learn together.
Yeah.
Rob, you've got 2 different funds. Can you just explain the rationale for the 2 funds, and also if there's any final comments before we open the floor to questions?
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about this already, but when we created Circulate Capital, it was around the time that some research had come out that found that most of the plastic that gets into the ocean comes from a handful of countries in South and Southeast Asia. And that if we invest in recycling in the circular economy here, we could cut that flow of plastic pollution in half. But the problem was no one was investing in the space. And when you were talking to institutional investors, they weren't really that interested in waste and recycling. In fact, if you talk to them about infrastructure, they'd talk about these other things like bridges and roads and ports, and waste and recycling wasn't even in the scope. And so that's why we created Circulate Capital. And we were able to do that in partnership with Danone and several other leading global corporations, because no one else would. But we've also recognized that that's not the end game, because we need many, many more investors involved in this. And so we created this new fund as a way to make that pathway happen. So that to make it more available for private investors and family offices to bring this kind of catalytic capital behind our existing strategy with the corporates, which makes it more interesting, but also with the innovation opportunity and starting to demonstrate that real IRR that is critical to prove a sector as investable.
That's wonderful. We have one final poll before we move the Q&A from the audience. So if you could please launch that, Jen. Thank you. If we can close that out, I'll go to the questions from the audience. There are quite a few questions coming in. Let me see which one. This is from Bob Webb. While CE is largely about private investment, how do you see governments facilitating this? And is there much difference between government policies in various Asian countries? Would you be able to take that, Rob?
Sure, I can start, and I imagine everyone might have a thought or two on this point.
Yep.
So, Corinne actually teed this up pretty well, but it's much more than any single actor. Corporations have a role, private investors have a role, government certainly has a critical role. And we've seen a lot of the opportunities created in India, as Ratna noted, from existing regulations and policies that were set in place a decade ago to create a market for recycling and help build those companies to a level where they're able to be investable and scale. So right now in Asia, Southeast Asia, it's kind of a patchwork. Some countries have created national frameworks like Indonesia has. Others have not, or they have laws on the books that they haven't implemented yet. So every market is quite different in this space, but we do see policy and government as a critical enabler to driving this kind of impact that will enable private investment to flow. And that's where the overlap and the alignment is if the government is able to reduce that risk and create more certainty, private capital flows and jobs are created and economic development flows from there too.
I think if we move over to Queen on this one, and I can see Alvis's question on challenges in implementing CE in Indonesia is there as well. And he's asking a similar question. Did the government of Indonesia need to be actively involved? And were there some incentives given to the private sector as well to have these programs in place? So if you could take that as well, Corinne.
Well, and probably also building on what Rob was saying, I think it's also it's evolving every single day. And when we launched our Bijak Plastic movement in Indonesia, it was actually around the time that also Indonesia declared their ambition to work towards a 70% reduction of waste to ocean. And we've been collaborating very closely with the government and their partners to see how we could implement a roadmap towards that. And nowadays, all companies are being asked to submit a roadmap towards this circular ambition. So I think it's moving and it's evolving, and I'm very optimistic that this will move into the right direction with a very strong ambition of the Indonesian government. But it also requires companies to lead the way and to be able to and willing to collaborate with different partners and to show them the way that this is not only about impacting the planet, but also about creating business and sustainable business models. So I would say it's really happening in Indonesia, and is also a great example for the other Southeast Asian countries. So I think it's also about showing the way to all the stakeholders, including governments.
Ratna, you mentioned about Indonesia as well, and what's happening. I mean, and specifically for the hospitality industry, how is it combating plastic waste? And are there some quick wins there that could be had?
I mean, ultimately, I mean, it's an effort that takes a lot of operation muscle, right? The average person doesn't know what reduce, reuse, recycle is, let alone if they even throw trash in the trash can, right? So teaching every single person in the company to sort their trash when they know very well that, unfortunately, in most places in Indonesia, they don't, when they collect it, it's all already mixed up, right? So that was the reason why in Jakarta, we have this partner and our trash is being processed by them. Once we do the sorting, they're the ones who then make sure all the recycling goes to the right places and all the compost or the organic waste is processed properly as well, and deviate as much of it away from the landfill, which is like a humongous mountain that is technically supposed to be already overloaded and supposed to be closed already this year, right? In Bali, we don't have that. In Bali is very complicated because each banjar, so each regional area, the waste management operator is appointed by the local stronghold community. And so we were fortunate that we were able to work with ours. Ours was willing to work with our ambitions to have things properly sorted, properly managed as much as possible. And because we are so, I guess, diligent at that, the Banjar actually made us kind of help them train the other hotels in our area for that. But it really takes, you really have to get literally your hands dirty, no pun intended, to really sort every single thing on your own. Find, like if you have, various types of organic waste, like what can you do even to reuse it, right? Like we cannot serve white rice again like we do in our house. So we make that into crisps, right? We use the scales of the fish and then mix it in, and then, we create another dish. And for the plastic, we have to think about all the different things, waste, what we can do, how can we use it as art or as installation, who do we work with, etc. So yeah, I mean, I guess we're fortunate that we have a brand that is that can help us explain and express all the different things that we're doing. But even that doesn't do justice to all the hard work and the dirty work that happens on the grounds.
I think it's important to be a catalyst, and yourself and Pandu are both demonstrating that. Pandu, there's more impact investing happening now. How is the investment going towards the circular economy? How significant is this number compared to a common investor that are actively investing in Indonesian businesses? And how do we get more people mobilized, more investors mobilized into this space?
Yeah, that's a lot of questions. It's actually similar into one line. I think it's essentially a reallocation of capital that has to be done. I think it's a combination of what's going on today from a macro level, geopolitically, and also what's happening within each country. Each country is doing it differently, maybe specific to Indonesia, where I may have more knowledge of. I think the government wants to make this zero carbon move, and this will relate to Rob's circular economy as kind of like one of the main legacy that they want to leave, right? So they said, I'll set the stone today to build that for 20, 30 years from now, right? So that's actually an important statement from a country perspective. So when you mention about investment, for example, I'm on the board of our Indonesian stock exchange. By 2020, next year, 2022, every single company that's listed, about 760, have to make an ESG report. We have to there will be an ESG index, right, for investors, both passive and active investors, institutional, that they can invest in. We'll create the top 30 companies, then they do it, right? So we're being helped by global institution to help measure what does it mean to be in the top 30 companies from an ESG perspective, right? So those are, I would say, actions that are being done, because we do see the ESG as an asset class, as the fastest growing asset class globally, both on public market as well as private market. So we see it as a significant growth sector. And as what I mentioned to Rob, this is a movement that is happening to this part of the world, I think, very fast. And again, this will be like a tipping point where it may just go up, just like, going up very fast. And that's a good thing. And what you will see, and this is going to be the big issue, I would say, the next 3 to 4 years, is a big shortage of talent. And I would say there's going to be a chase of knowledge, because we really don't know where everybody is trying to play catch up, right? So the next 3 to 4 years, everyone is going to play a learning game. Now, what does that mean also for the companies that we invest in, or the companies that are creating this impact? Don't forget, some of these companies are also mid-scale, right? But there will be inflation happening also in the value of these companies, right? Because there's going to be quite a bit of an expectation that's going to come in. So, there's going to be some type of mismatch, demand and supply. But it's a good thing, because I think as this goes, there will also be an equilibrium. Smarter people, younger people will also move to this industry, right? And that's important too, from a human capital perspective. I think there will also be a shift. So people are not necessarily going to technology. People are going to focus on circular economy as one of their main vocation coming out of school. And these are for the top talents, right? You're chasing top talent, and that's where top talents may go. So, I'm actually becoming very bullish, but maybe I'm a bit too early, but I think we're there already. And we'll see that inflection point in the next couple of years.
We sincerely hope so. Corinne, Danone has pledged to become carbon neutral by 2050. How are you ensuring that you're carbon neutral throughout your full value chain? How are you ensuring your partners are adopting these practices as well?
That's a great question. And it indeed shows that we are not only responsible for our direct emissions, but also those of our value chain. And obviously, that is something that we are very careful about too. So the known strategy to achieve carbon neutrality is based on the following pillars. Reducing emissions is one. Transforming agricultural practices to sequester more carbon in the ground, and eliminating deforestation from our supply chain, and offsetting the emissions that remain. So we have worked together with the science-based target to ensure that our strategy is in line with the measures needed to keep global warming below the 2 degrees. And we see a great opportunity in what is called regenerative agriculture. It's a mouthful, but it's something that is very, very interesting, which is an agricultural practices that is focusing on soil health and really important. Agriculture is not just a way to reduce carbon emissions, but also actually take CO2 out of the atmosphere and store it in the ground. And by transitioning to more regenerative agricultural practices around all of our sites and throughout the value chain, like keeping roots in the soil rather than tilling, our producers can improve soil health, which in turn will help to keep the carbon in the ground. To do this, we are working very closely with our farmers, the farmers in the surroundings of our factories. We have many factories in Indonesia, and the whole ecosystem is working around this. And this will also support them financially, and we give them access to technical expertise to support them and make this happen. And as I said before as well, we also work together with our packaging producers to maximize the use of the recycled content and come with new innovations which can reduce our plastic and carbon footprint. And I want to maybe add also something to what Pandu and Ratna were also alluding to. We really see that the younger generations are actually demanding this from companies and from the companies behind the brands and products that they buy. So all this is not just a CSR initiative or however you want to call it. It is really as part of a business model that is actually making sure that you do it in a sustainable way, but also make your products far more interesting and attractive for the market, which is consumers that are far more conscious about the importance of looking after the planet. So it's truly integrated into our business, and we believe it's an investment as any other investment we do, that we have to trade off and manage the ROI on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Corinne. I guess we've really come to the end of our session, and we can continue on. Rob, one final passing sort of 30-second strategy statement you can make, because I know there's a lot of questions around ROI and strategy that people are asking from you, how to set up a firm in this space. So if you could guide them, please, and then I'll do my closing statements.
Yeah, it's a little hard to summarize how to set up an investment firm in 30 seconds, but hire a good lawyer, I guess, is probably the short answer. The circular economy is a great investment opportunity, and that's our view, and that's why we were interested in helping convene this conversation. And I hope that it was clear that it's coming from a variety of different angles, right? It's a great opportunity for corporates who are trying to reduce their carbon footprint and hit the carbon neutral, but also prevent plastic pollution at the same time, as well as the venture capital and other investor types. So I just hope that that message resonated with the group, and they're starting to see where they can play a role and contribute as well. And look forward to those conversations beyond this panel, and look forward to engaging with the community beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's webinar. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. Please join me in giving a huge thank you to today's speakers for sharing their insights on the importance of catalyzing capital to advance the circular economy in Asia.